Hello, and welcome to Conversations About a Way Forward, a podcast from the Talk on Main Street. Your host is Annabelle Park, and today her guest is activist Pete Perry.
So do you mind if I live stream this conversation?
Yes, that's fine.
Okay.
That's fine. As long as you're also talking to Black and Brown leaders too.
Yeah, I'm just trying to get conversations started among people and just hearing many voices. But yeah, we're definitely prioritizing African Americans. But I just think it's important to hear from many people right now, but especially yours. Let's see.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah, no, I follow you, and it just means a lot for me to be able to hear what you're saying. So it's
I know for a lot of folks, I come off as a little too radical, and some people get turned off by that. But what I'm seeing happen now is sort of, come to fruition as stuff that I've advocated for a long time.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so I need like 1 minute just to type in the description. Is that okay? How should I refer to you? It's like an activist or?
I know. I don't like the term activist. You can say activist. So you can say Washington D.C. based activist. That's fine.
Okay. And can I use your name?
You can, yes.
Okay. Great. I'm calling it just a conversation about a way forward. Okay.
A way forward?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
It's just as a way of just kind of framing like why we're having this conversation. So, yeah. Okay. So I'm about to go live. Any questions for me before we start?
How are your parents
doing? They're doing okay. We're hanging in there. But they're just full of anxiety like everybody else.
Right.
But they lived through a war.
It's really good you're there with them. That's fantastic because that eases their anxiety, I'm sure.
Okay. So I'm about to hit live. Okay. Says it's setting up. Okay. So, hi, Pete. How are you this morning?
Hi. I'm good. Hi, Annabelle. Good to see you. Even if only by Zoom, I still see you.
Fantastic. Well, I love that you're sharing part of your morning with us. Where are you headed right now?
Right now, I'm headed up to a church up in Silver Spring to pick up some boxes of food for undocumented families that the organization I volunteer with have formed relationships with and are assisting, especially through these really hard, difficult times. I mean, undocumented people are also part of our economy. Actually a very vital part of our economy. We don't even realize the 11.5 million undocumented people in this country, and many of them have now lost jobs like many other folks, so they do not receive the government checks. So yeah, they're in an especially difficult place.
Yeah, some of the most vulnerable people right now, especially with the pandemic and the economy in this free fall. So thank you for doing that. Really appreciate all the work you do. Would you say like you spend a lot of time working to help an undocumented community? Is that kind of your focus?
that has been my focus the last couple years. Yeah, I think as I've seen what's happened with this administration purposely targeting the undocumented brown community and undocumented black community very specifically, I felt like it was time for folks with privilege like myself, white privilege, to step in and help where we could to sort of counteract Trumpism.
Hmm. And how long have you been an activist? I know you're not fond of that term, but how long have you been active?
Well, I did let you use that descriptor because that's how a lot of people see me. So I didn't do it so much in high school and college. I sort of did a little bit here and there. My first protest was in front of the South African Embassy when I was 14 years old. And then after college and after grad school, I gradually became more involved with it and became very involved in activism, I would say, after the 2002, 2002 invasion of Iraq. Really, that's when I really started getting very involved. I saw, again, young men and women, usually of working class backgrounds, sent off to fight and kill brown folks, poor brown folks over on the other side of the world, for no apparent reason except some lies that were told to us.
Mm-hmm. That's actually when I got involved as well. The war.
Oh, awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah, awesome.
Yeah. And I kept thinking that I'm gonna make this like my focus in life, my primary occupation, until things improve in our country. And then I could go back to other endeavors, but it hasn't improved since then, so but so tell me what's on your mind these days. Like, I know you were at the protest. Was it yesterday or the day before?
I've gone yesterday, the day before, and the day before that. So I went 3 days in a row down to downtown Lafayette Park. Well, the first day we marched up to the Capitol building and had a rally in front of the Capitol building. And then since then, the focus has sort of been around Lafayette Park. And I think, I'm not even going to call him by his name, 45, stoked the flames some more and used tear gas and flashbangs to clear the way through, at that point, very, very peaceful protesters, just so he could have a photo op in front of the historic St. John's Church on the other side of Lafayette Park. So they pushed all those people out with violence. And so ever since then, the focus has been more and more just right there on the White House, because he sort of brought that on himself. But what you're seeing is you're seeing protests throughout 50 states. I think Monday there was protests in all 50 states at the same time about the same issue, which is, of course, the brutality, police brutality against the Black community in our country, and how that has continued unabated for, centuries really now. But, no real accountability in our justice system for criminal police.
Are you feeling encouraged, though, by seeing so many people come out for the protests and to hear pushback against Trump, even among some Republicans? I mean, are you feeling encouraged by what you're seeing?
I am. I think it's not really about, to a degree it is about Trump, but it's so much bigger too. Like I said, this goes back 400 to 450 years of systematic oppression and dehumanization of the Black community. I am very hopeful, actually, because like I said, I can't remember, maybe when I was a baby during the Vietnam War, there were, all 50 states protesting the same thing at the same time. Maybe way back then, but I don't remember that. I was just a baby. So I am feeling hopeful because my theory of change has always been that you have to basically become ungovernable to get the government to do what you actually want them to do. And, you know, people in power are in Washington, D.C., sort of in a bubble. And I know Republicans or, you know, conservative people out in rural areas will talk about the D.C. bubble. Well, I'm from D.C. I was raised here, born here. It is a bubble in a lot of ways. A lot of people are, you know, reelected term after term after term, and they begin to lose the feel of what ordinary people on Main Street are dealing with. So I think you have to really shake them up. And they have to start worrying. They have to start feeling real concern to truly enact significant changes, societal changes, legislative changes, really, in our society. And I think we're going to start to see that now, because it's really, I'm seeing what I've been advocating for a lot is a lot of folks on the streets. Many are peaceful, but becoming ungovernable. They're not obeying these curfews, which I have a real problem with too, because I see the curfews as just further bolstering the racist police state that already exists. So yeah, we're seeing that tension really, and I think it's good tension. So I'm feeling kind of hopeful that change, like positive change, will start to happen because the media is covering it 24/7. And just among friends that I have that aren't even activists at all are very supportive. Just comments on the street from people I walk by or I hear saying very positive things about the protests. So, you know, I am definitely feeling hopeful.
And have you been affected by the police violence? Like, have you, I know you probably witnessed it, but like, do you, you know, were you hurt in any way during the protests?
No, but I walk in white skin, so I'm cognizant that that's kind of a protective shield for me. But I also, having gone to so many protests for so many years, I sort of know when to cross the line and when not to cross the line, and I'm able to make that choice. And I think it's largely through my experience. I know when something's about to go down, and I can choose at that point to be in that confrontation. It doesn't have to be a violent confrontation. It could be a nonviolent direct action, civil resistance action, or I could choose not to be in it. You know, I can choose either way. And I'm not trying to toot my own horn, but I've done it so many times. I can sort of see when cops are beginning to kettle, when they're beginning to pull out the zip ties. I'm very cognizant of those things. But I also have the white privilege too that also protects me to a large degree from brute force from the police.
I mean, are you and feel free to, you know, just say you'd rather not say, but you know, I'm just wondering about some of your conversations with your friends, especially white friends, about what's happening. And what are some things that you would really like to get across to some maybe white progressives who are not really quite understanding how to respond to these events? Is there something that you want to get off your chest, like something you would like to say?
Yeah, I mean, a little bit. Yeah, I mean, I'm aware that this is happening, the pandemic, so I wear a mask every time I go down to the protests. I'm not like trying to hug everybody or get in people's face, and I do have this on. But some people are, you know, I understand the concern about the pandemic, but I think there's also other concerns, to be quite honest, about Black leadership. And I think there's some residual racism there, even amongst white progressives, that they don't feel like they can fully trust Black leadership to not get into an uber confrontational stance in some of these protests, and that they think violence will happen. By the same token, they also realized that the police are racist. And so they realized that the police will obviously, and we've seen this already many times the last few days, the police instigate the violence. And so, folks are afraid of their, personal safety, their health. And I understand that. But I also understand, being a history major in college, this is what it takes. I mean, that's always been my theory of change. Like I was just talking about, this is what it takes. And if you can't do it, I wish you could. I'm sorry, but I do, because I think there are certain things that are worth fighting for. And, 400 years of this oppression and systematic dehumanization has to end. I really believe that for the whole society, not just Black community, not just brown community, but the whole society to advance and progress. You have to break those chains that have held us back for so long. And I think this is the way to do it. And if folks don't want to come out, I'm a little bit disappointed in some of my progressive activist friends. Even though I understand the concerns, I still feel like this is important enough to know you're taking the procedures, wear the mask, don't get all the way up in people's face, don't feel like you have to hug everybody, but you need to come out. I feel that it's time, as if we really want to even try and become white allies, we need to show up first.
I see. What's the outcome that you would like to see as a result? Like, can you try to, maybe spell out some more concrete policies or outcomes you would like to see as a result of the protests?
Yeah. I think that there's a lot of legislation being talked about now. Of course, I'd be in favor of defunding the police altogether, but I know that's not going to happen in this reality. Biden was speaking the other day, and I'm not a fan of Biden's at all, and I've got some serious problems with him. But what he said was needed, the words, and he highlighted Hakeem Jeffries' total federal ban on the chokehold being used by the police. And yeah, that obviously should be passed and signed into law right away, though I doubt Trump would do it, but it needs to be passed definitely as soon as possible. And there's other, there should be every police department should institute thorough de-escalation training. And also, a lot of cities should maybe not use the police, but develop another force when there's, and I think in some municipalities, when there's like a mental health crisis and somebody's sort of freaking out on the street, but they're completely unarmed, they're just, serious mental illness issues going on, and, bring somebody out that's got some training on how to cope with that and how to de-escalate the situation. And not always use force. I think a lot of, and not a lot, but several of the lethal encounters in the last few years have been with mentally ill folks, mentally disabled folks, and the police have ended up, on some occasions killing people. And that's very tragic, because it just shows a lack of appropriate training, I think, in those situations, an acute lack of appropriate training to handle that situation. So reforms like that, and reforms, racial awareness, sensitivity training. There was the sheriff in Flint that laid down his gun and marched with some of the Black Lives Matter protesters within the last week. He's pretty amazing, so it's just it takes I don't know, maybe a mindset change, but I think a lot of it can be accomplished through training, that you don't always have to meet protesters with tear gas and flashbangs, that try and communicate with people. And I think a lot of police forces, you've got people that have come back from Afghanistan, Iraq, and they're suffering with their own PTSD.
Yeah.
And I don't want to say discriminate, but I think there maybe needs to be some standards about who's really ready to be a police officer and who's not. So I think maybe more screening should happen when you're applying to become a police officer. And yeah, I think a lot of those folks need more mental health care too. People returning from war zones, it's I've met people who are veterans, and it changes their life, those kind of experiences.
Right.
So yeah, I think there needs to be some of that, training, health, mental health care for those folks. And then yeah, I think there needs to be screening about who's becoming police and who's not, because we're handing over a lot of power to police. And so I think that needs to be looked at very carefully of who we're turning those badges and guns over to.
Yeah. I mean, one thing I want to share with you is that some of those, I talked to some more conservative people recently about this situation, and they've kind of expressed that because of the video, if they hadn't seen the video, they would have been more inclined to believe that the police had somehow some justification for using violent force. But watching the video, there's just no ambiguity. There's no doubt in their mind that this was wrong and this was murder. So I think really it's like I'm seeing this kind of shift in perception that, my goodness, all those instances in the past of police violence are now being questioned. Like, I didn't believe the Black community, but now I do. So I just see a real shift in how the people are perceiving these confrontations with the police. And two, what I would like to see happen is going beyond like police reform, which is extremely important. But beyond that, I would like for us to really talk about expending real resources into creating income inequality, and to address poverty and financial insecurity, food insecurity. I think we need to really talk about what I would call reparation, and really shifting resources to the Black community, because a lot of this is taking place in the context of extreme financial violence, in my opinion, economic violence. And so I feel like we should kind of take the conversation to that level at some point, to say this isn't just about police reform, but it's also about changing our economic situation and priorities, and really address the problems that we've had since the beginning of this country, but that we have a economy based on race and white supremacy, and I think we've got to look at it very starkly and soberly, that we have to choose something else. Capitalism.
That's something that doesn't get the light shined on it very often, about just how extreme income disparity is. It always has been a pretty extreme divide between white and Black. If you compare the median income of a Black household versus a white household, it's extreme. It's always been extreme, but I think in this era that we're living in right now, it's become even more extreme. It's like exacerbating our society. And again, it's like I said, it has to be addressed. Either the needs of the Black community has to be addressed. I agree, and I'm fully in favor of reparations. a lot of people say, well, how are you going to do that? How are you not? Well, I think Representative Sheila Jackson Lee has set up a commission to study it. So, I mean, I trust that under Sheila Jackson Lee's leadership, that some sort of solution can be had for reparations, and it needs to happen.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we just did a $3 trillion bailout. I mean, we can make this happen if there's a determination and the urgency.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I mean, what I also want to see in terms of like the framing of this is, I feel like it should be white supremacists versus everybody else. I really want there to be solidarity.
Right.
Yes, it's
right.
not
and
just.
Like you said, there are conservatives that are not racist. Not a lot, but some of my very progressive friends will say, those neoconservatives, they're all racist. Like, not all conservatives are. Well, first of all, not all conservatives are neoconservatives, but also not all conservatives are racist. Like, they're not.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I have met black folks that are legit conservatives. So yeah, it should be everybody against white supremacists, and maybe that's beginning to take shape now, also through these protests. I could see that maybe happening.
Yeah, and all this it's going to require a lot of soul searching, and that I see happening. People are soul searching, and they're accepting some level of responsibility as having been unintentionally complicit in the past, or just kind of not taking the time to really understand our history. But yeah, I absolutely think this is a time for us to have these deeper conversations and get into these huddles with each other and just talk it through and encourage people to really stand up for what's right now. And I think it's going to take all kinds of conversations and demonstrations, and in the end, I think it has to be like a show of power. I mean, it is going to be that we have to show that there are more of us and more organized, and we have the determination to win, to change this. And they, at some point, they do have to fear us. Right? Trump has to be afraid of us.
I think black voices need to be brought into all these conversations, and there's still some spaces. There's still a lot of spaces where you're really not hearing the black voice, the black perspective coming in. And I think as progressives, we always need to demand that the black voices be heard in this national conversation. Always.
Yeah. Right. Yeah, no, I totally agree with you, and I am fully on board with doing that. However, I also think we need to ask people to speak up, and not be silent at this moment. Like, find a way to speak up and use their voice, because we need to hear from really everybody. But yeah, I mean, mostly I just wanted to connect with you because I am so grateful to the work you do. I don't know if you are aware that many of us feel like incredible gratitude towards you for the work you do, and how fearless you are in speaking your mind. So I just wanted you to know that. And
I don't feel that fear. I don't feel that fearless. I feel like I should push myself further. But thank you.
Yeah. Okay. Well, let us know if there's anything we can do to support you. Honestly, just ask.
Yeah, I mean, there's an action happening right now. I think they gathered at Freedom Plaza this morning to demand justice for George Floyd, Breonna Taylor, and many other black folks that have been victimized and killed by the police. And they're marching to the Capitol building. And I believe there's going to be a sit-in at the Capitol building happening in just a few minutes. So people might want to check that out on Twitter. The Twitter handle I was using was DC Protest.
So the Twitter handle.
Direct actions coming up soon, I'm sure.
I'm sorry, what's the
The
Twitter
Twitter
handle?
hashtag, I believe, is DC.
Oh,
For that specific action, I'm not sure. I
okay.
think it's being organized by a group called DC Freedom Fighters,
Mm-hmm.
and
Okay.
so they should be starting they're marching to the Capitol right now, I believe, and they should be starting their sit-in at the Capitol building in just a few minutes.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think what I read was they're meeting at Freedom Plaza at 9:30, and then they're
Yeah,
marching to the Capitol. But I
right.
figure out the exact hashtag and handle. Thank you so much, Pete, and
Yeah, sure.
have a lovely day.
You too, Annabelle.
Let's check in again, and I hope to
We
see you in
will.
person sometime.
Oh, thank you.
Okay,
Thank
thank you
you.
so much. Okay,
Have a good day.
bye. You too.
Bye-bye.
You've been listening to Conversations About a Way Forward with Annabelle Park. To learn more about Talk on Main Street, find us on Facebook.